that it is great on the highway, it is good for the spirited drives when you start to push it, and it is very frustrating to live with day to day for the everyday stuff. I've been driving this car around for the last week, and believe it or not, YouTube is not paying my bills, so I'm doing the daily drive to work, driving the kids around, driving the wife around, and doing some spirited drives as well. And as always, feel free to use the chapters if you don't care about everything I'm going to talk about. So what makes it good on the highway is the ride is very good. It's very comfortable, even on these big 20s. It does have the dynamic chassis. It has all these driver's assist features that really do stay out of the way pretty well when you're just cruising. It has collision avoidance, blind spot monitoring. It has adaptive cruise along with a lane centering. If you want the car to change lanes for you, you hit your blinker and it will find a clear spot to change lanes for you, and it will do the lane changing for you. But the best thing about it is the lane centering combined with the adaptive cruise. The adaptive cruise is also on the more aggressive side, so if you set it to the smallest distance, it will actually get pretty close up on people, but you can adjust that setting as needed. The one issue with the highway driving is that it's loud in here. Again, I'm on big 20s with summer tires, summer performance tires, these Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's. So if you swap those tires out, you can probably get a quieter tire that is better just for cruising. So now for the spirited drives. When you start to push it, if you're in Sport or Sport Plus, and you're in the middle of your tack to the upper part of your tack, there's really no lag. Like, it can pull. It has plenty of torque, and actually rear steer is standard here, where it will actually turn the back wheels opposite of the front wheels if you're going under 37 miles an hour to kind of shorten your wheelbase, or virtually shorten your wheelbase and make it a little bit more nimble. And then above 37, it will actually go with the same direction as your front wheels, lengthen your wheelbase, make it a little bit more planted in those corners. But if you're, driving spiritedly, you're probably going over 37. So, if you're doing something subtle, sort of tight and a little bit more technical, then that rear steer isn't quite as helpful in the nimbleness, if that makes any sense. And the car is still very heavy. It's 4,000 pounds, and you can feel that weight in the corner. But like I mentioned, power delivery is good, and it will hold its own. The steering is good. It's nice and tight, especially as you start to get faster, slower speeds. The steering does loosen up a little bit, and it also has the sound pumped in, which is not my favorite thing, but it is real exhaust sound. Perfect timing. We'll talk about traffic while I sit in traffic. All right, so the problem is at lower speeds and at the bottom part of the tack, when you're in comfort mode, transmission is a little bit drunk, and so is the auto start stop feature. There's a lot of assist going on. There's brake assist. It feels like the engine is braking. Even in comfort mode, it is very aggressive about engine braking in second gear. And sometimes the auto start stop system will kick on when you're not even stopped. It's called glide, and it's not actually supposed to do that unless you're in individual mode and you have that turned on, but it still does it anyway, sometimes in comfort mode. Just now, I'm not even stopped. I was in second gear and the auto start stop kicked in, which means that it's also not ready to go when I'm ready to go. So if I'm coasting to a stop, the person in front of me starts going, and I go over to the gas pedal and it's not ready for me. If you look at like the M340i, which has the mild hybrid system as well, the 48 volt, that actually is always ready. The throttle response is immediate no matter what mode you're in. And if the auto start stop kicks in, then the electric motor can still get you off the line while the starter gets the engine go. That is not the case here. It feels like I'm always waiting for the engine to start back up, and there it goes again, and the system is drunk. Sometimes it'll shut the car off, and then 1 second later it'll just turn the car back on even though I'm still stopping. Maybe that's because I've got the air conditioner going, but why did it turn it off in the first place if it's going to turn it back on in just 1 second? The other thing about driving around town is in the lower gears, it is very clunky. So first, second, and sometimes third are very clunky gears. So every time I'm going from a light, well, not every time, it's not even every time, it's not consistent. A lot of times those lower gears are just very rough shifts, and it's not comfortable, especially when I have, you know, my kids in the car, my wife in the car. Like if I'm the one driving, it doesn't bother me quite as much, but it's still frustrating. You know, it's so much worse as a passenger though. And another thing about this transmission, like I mentioned, it's snappy, it's quick in the top part of the tach. Even if you want to use the paddle shifters for yourself, if you're in comfort mode and I'm trying to go, like yesterday, I was slowing down because the person in front of me was turning, and then he turned and I hadn't fully come to a stop. I was still in 5th gear. I hit the gas, and instead of dropping a gear, it lugged for a full second before dropping and then started to go. So you get a lug and then a quick drop and a shove, and it's just not comfortable. And these are things that happen often. This is not like a here and there. It's happening very often, and it's very frustrating because it is still a Mercedes. I understand it's AMG and it needs to be more performance oriented, but this is not a dedicated track car. If it was a dedicated track car, it probably wouldn't have 4 doors. It wouldn't weigh 4,000 pounds. It needs to be able to do the daily drive stuff well, and it is very frustrating around town. Under the hood here is where we probably have the most controversial update for the W206 generation, that is model year 2023 and later. There is no more inline 6. We have a turbocharged 4-cylinder instead of a turbocharged inline 6, but this is not just your ordinary 4-cylinder. It has an electrified turbocharger that is supposed to completely eliminate turbo lag. This is technology that they developed for the AMG F1 team. They put it in the SL. This is the second car that they put it in now. This motor is hand built as an M139 motor. This one in particular was built by Jorge. Each one is hand built by one single person. Now, this system is supposed to make 402 horsepower, but it can in some situations add an extra 13 horsepower from the electric motor, and it makes 369 pound-feet of torque. So a little bit more horsepower than before, but a little bit less torque. That turbocharger that I mentioned is driven by a 48-volt system, also drives the belt-driven starter generator, and this engine is mated to a 9-speed SpeedShift transmission. It is an MCT, multi-clutch technology, that is Mercedes AMG's own thing. So it is not a dual clutch, it is not a traditional torque converter automatic, but it is developed for snappy, responsive, quick shifts. So I was a little mad when I went on the configurator and every single color was a shade of gray: white, black, gray, silver, except for one single blue. But then this thing showed up and I think it is gorgeous. I am squarely in the needs to be a color camp, especially for a more performance oriented car. But this thing is beautiful. I'm not even mad. This is selenite gray. This is the matte version. There's also a metallic version as well. And you see all this black trim around the windows. You got the dark chrome down here. This has the 2 different night packages on it, so that kind of sets things off a little bit, adds a little bit of contrast. You can get some chrome inserts for here too if you want a kind of an interesting option, but a little bit more contrast if you want to do that. These are keyless lock and unlock even from the back doors, which is kind of nice. And of course, we've got the power folding mirrors as well. Overall, we're looking at about 188 inches long, technically a mid-size sedan. It's going to be about on par with an S4 or an M340i Grand Coupe, the 4-door version of the 4 Series in terms of overall length, but really your primary competitor is probably going to be the M340i. We're looking at 112-inch wheelbase, 112.6, nice and long for the size of the car, help with that ride quality, help with that plannedness a little bit. And it's sitting on 18s usually with all seasons, but this one has the 20s optioned. You can also option 19s. When you get the 19s or the 20s, then you get summer tires as well. This is wrapped in Michelin Pilot Sport 4S summer tires, kind of your go-to tire when you want something a little more performance oriented. And it's a staggered setup, so the back tires are actually a little wider because it does have a rear bias. It's a permanent all-wheel drive system. There is no rear drive version of this, only all-wheel drive, but it sends 69% of the torque to the back and 31 to the front. So rear biased, wider tires in the back, a little bit better for grip when you're coming off the line. For the front end, I love the look of this thing. I love the contour through here. It looks really nice. The Mercedes badge there. Looks really super classy. And we've got the giant logo up front though. That thing's getting pretty massive. You got the camera, the parking sensors. This little bug nailed that parking sensor just perfectly. But it does have that whole 360 view with all the parking sensors. Works really, really nicely. Again, more of this like black, dark chrome stuff going on down here, the trim, and then the vertical slats going through here because of those night packages that it's got on this. AMG badge, lots of cooling. Got the intercooler poking through there as well, since this is turbocharged. Lots of cooling through there, lots of functional vents, as well as some vents over here that are not, you know, fake vents for fake air, as I like to say. That is on both sides. Neither side actually has any kind of real purpose. It's just all for looks. There's another package you can add on as well that'll give you like a bigger splitter, a more aggressive splitter, as well as a rear spoiler. Full LED headlights going on. Very nice visibility here, and they look really nice. Mercedes isn't just about function, they are all about form, and these lights look super nice. Great visibility, full LEDs, and they have the digital lights. This one has those options, which means that it can actually display warnings and different alerts on the road itself in different situations. So that's kind of a cool technology. That is an additional $1,100. Is not standard, but that is optioned on here. I love the way they put Mercedes Benz right there on the side of that light. Back end here, we got the subtle little spoiler going on. Again, if you option that package with the front splitter, then you get a little bit of a different spoiler. You got the dark chrome badges because of those night packages. Again, parking sensors all around the back, dark diffuser, quad exhaust for those pops and bangs. The LED lights, again, they put so much attention to detail in the lights. The lights even look beautiful. I love that. I can't get over those. If you want to open this up, you can do it by hand, or you can use the key right there on this nice hefty key fob. Push that button right there at the bottom, and it opens up into 12.6 cubic feet of space. We've got a 40-20-40 split on the seats. Drop those down with the press of a button on either side here. You can actually close it with the key fob as well, or push the button right there. Let it close itself. So the interior here is absolutely beautiful. I would expect nothing less from a Mercedes. It's just, once you get in close and you start using things and touching things, it falls apart a little bit, which is a little frustrating to see when you're talking about a car that's $60,000 to start. This one's optioned out to almost 80. You know, from a 10-foot view, the double spoke thing going on here on the steering wheel, the flat sides with the round bottom, just the way that they flowed this together. I know it's a big iPad right in the middle, but they did make it flow nicely, the way the vents are laid out. And at night, actually, it's got a pretty cool like jet cockpit thing going on with all these, with all the ambient lights going on. I wish I could get a better shot of that with a better camera. But you know, you've got the leather surfaces, you got the suede, you got this weaved metallic thing going on. The seats look sporty and aggressive, but not too aggressive. You got the red seat belts. You can't option black ones if you're not into the red thing. But it just, all around, it just looks really nice. And then you get in close, all this gloss black, which to me, when I see that gloss black, usually I think the company ran out of budget and they were like, oh, we got to put something cheap in, but it still needs to look nice. And it does look nice, at least until, you know, you're a week or two in and it's got dust and fingerprints all over it, which is a little frustrating. And worse than the fact that it's gloss black though, a lot of this stuff is capacitive touch. People get on Volkswagen and Honda for like the little touch sliders they got going on, and they revolted so much that Honda switched their volume back to knobs. The guy at Volkswagen got fired for making everything capacitive. And yet here we are in a car that's much more expensive than a GTI or a Civic, and we've still got all this capacitive stuff You know, your volume is a slider here. Oh, don't worry, I'll just use the steering wheel instead. Well, guess what? The steering wheel volume is also a slider. You don't have a knob anywhere for that. Adjusting your infotainment here, you do have some buttons, kind of like the buttons are all like one big piece, though it feels a little bit cheap. And then there's a capacitive slider right in the middle of it. So it's a combination of this big plastic single button and capacitive slider. It's just frustrating to see that, but the rest of it is very nice here. You know, as with any Mercedes, there is a ton of stuff in here because Mercedes is very tech forward. You can set up your whole user profile with your individual driving mode, with your steering wheel settings, with all your seat settings, everything. Then you save it. You can save it using your fingerprint, so that next time you get in, if you and your significant other or whoever else is sharing the car, then you just get in and you use the fingerprint sensor right here and you can switch to your driving mode. Everything will go into place. That's a pretty nice feature. The seats I mentioned, memory seats, memory steering wheel. You got tons of adjustability here. Mercedes always puts the seat settings on the door like this, and you've got 3 memory settings as well as your heated seats right there on the door. If you do want ventilated seats, you can option those as well. You can also option a heated steering wheel. That is not standard. Actually, the suede is also not standard. The suede with the Napa leather and the red stitching, it would just typically be the leather wrapped steering wheel. I'm a fan of the suede. I'm glad they went with this one. You do have some of your performance stuff right here on the wheel, which is nice. You can change your driving mode right here with the twist of this knob. You can change your active exhaust, your traction control as well. Or if you wanted these buttons to be something different, you can actually cycle through. If you wanted it to be your suspension, your auto start stop, if you want it really nicely done in terms of those down there, just don't like the capacitive stuff and the big plastic buttons. Behind here, of course, we've got the big tacked on screen as well, because everyone's doing that nowadays. But it is very crystal clear. It's very appealing to the eye, and you have all kinds of different modes that you can set this thing in. I like the sport mode, but there's a classic mode. You can just have it show your nav. You can have all kinds of information in here, your tire pressure monitor system, your temperatures, your current speed, your traffic sign recognition, your driver's assist features. It's all in there. We've got your heads-up display as well with your basic information, your speed limit, your current speed, your driver's assist features that you have active. If you have nav going through the system, it'll tell you in about 27 different ways what your next turn is. It'll have a big map with an arrow on it and some lines, as well as like another little map that'll just show the next turn. It's very aggressive about showing your next move in the heads-up display. Or if you're running through Android Auto, it will also show you that through the heads-up display. It'll just be a little less aggressive. It'll just show you the arrow for your next turn instead of having all of that extra information. For the infotainment, as I mentioned, we've got your driver's settings in here. You've got your ambient light settings in here. There are a ton of different ways you can set up the ambient light in here. Very cool. My kids love that feature. Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, both standard through here, wireless as well. Your climate menu is buried in here. It is always visible at the bottom at the very least, so you can adjust your fan settings and your temperature easily. But if you want to adjust where everything's coming from, then you do have to click into the climate menu. Really not a huge deal. This does have the 4-zone climate. It has that option instead of the typical 2-zone climate that you would get. So you can control front and rear here, and the rear seats also have their own little digital display back there to adjust their climate. The system is a little bit on the laggy side. You know, there is a lot going on in here. It's just a little bit frustrating that sometimes it does get a little laggy. And of course, right now it's going really quickly. It has been a little bit laggy the last couple of days. Music from the infotainment comes through a Burmeister sound system. Note that is not the standard, that is the upgraded one. That is a very high-end sound system if you're not familiar with them. In terms of the back seats here, we're about 36 inches, which is actually a little bit better than the 4 Series and the A4. Plenty of room for me back there. As always, I'm only 5'7", so not really a problem for me sitting behind myself. Kids are both in forward-facing seats, no problems for them either. They do have a couple of USB ports back there. They've got some vents. I mentioned that they can adjust their own. Oh, and these seats are the black leather with the red accents. You Your standard is going to be the MB Tex, which is like a leatherette, a synthetic leather. There are a few different leather options that you can option. And these are very comfortable. I have no problems with these seats at all. I think they're bolstered just right. And the adjustability is great. I'm very comfortable in these seats. So at the end of the day, I'm not typically one to rant. If you've been watching any of my other videos, I can usually figure out who the buyer is, and some things are a little more forgivable, but this car is 60 grand and it's optioned up to almost 80. It is a 4-door sedan with a Mercedes badge, and it needs to be able to do Mercedes things, needs to be livable around town. And you know, even if I could forgive some of the gloss black and the haptic stuff, fine, I can let that go, even though I really don't want to, because again, it is just Mercedes and everything else about the interior is beautiful. I just would like some more real buttons in here. And actually the system, I mentioned the system is laggy this morning, completely froze up on me. So, you know, that stuff is frustrating, but even if I let that stuff go, just around town is so frustrating. Just the transmission, the transmission is so clunky, and the timing of the shifts, especially in comfort mode, and the auto start stop system altogether just makes it so frustrating to live with on a daily basis. And you know, if we're cross-shopping this with the M340i, it's so much more comfortable to live with. The auto start stop system is a lot less invasive because of that mild hybrid system working a lot better. It has the smoother transmission with that 8-speed ZF instead of this multi-clutch thing going on. It's just so much easier to live with. The interior is not as nice, it's not as elegant looking. God, I hate that lag, but it's just so much easier to live with, so much easier to interact with. Now, if you want all the latest and greatest tech and the safety features and all of that, Mercedes is going to win. Again, if you want the design, the beauty, Mercedes is going to win there as well. But if you want daily livability with something that you can still push, then you know the M340i is just the easy choice here for me. That's all I got for this week. As always, make sure to hit all the buttons, the like, the share, all that stuff really helps me out. If I missed something about this car, if you have differing opinions about the car, let me know. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.